Talk TV's international editor Isabel Oakeshott and author Bonnie Greer and associate editor of The Spectator and author Douglas Murray, who I guess, are you in New York, Douglas?
I am indeed.
So look, from your lofty scenario over there in New York, looking back at your mother country here, a lot of things that have been bubbling here, big. And I wouldn't mind just getting your take on that from New York. First of all, I don't know if you heard that interview just now with Mick Lynch about the strikes coming next week, but it does feel like a real throwback, this, to the 70s and 80s. You know, the old, militant union bosses holding the country to ransom. I just can't help feeling it's so ill-timed to be doing this right now.
I couldn't agree more. I listened to the interview with great interest because, like everybody else in Britain, I have had an experience plenty of times in my life of what happens when the rail unions go on strike. And, you know, what it means is that everybody trying to get into their place of work has the most miserable time imaginable. I've done it myself countless numbers of times when the unions strike. You end up having to stand for hours at a bus stop to get onto a massively overcrowded bus and travel for hours to do a journey that would normally take you maybe half an hour. And so every time this happens, public sentiment against the unions grows. I can assure you, and many of your viewers will appreciate this, nobody stands under somebody else's armpit on a massively overcrowded bus for hours and thinks happily about the rail unions. Nobody thinks, yeah, those guys should get a way above inflation pay rise. Nobody thinks that.
Well, that's
nobody thinks that the rail
Bonnie Greer is raising her hand, actually.
I stand under people's armpits, and I don't have a problem with that. I think a part of a civilized society.
Well, you're an unusual person.
Well, it's true, and I used to live in New York, too, so I can say that. Part of civilized society is that workers should be able to withhold their labor, and we need organized labor. I have no problems with this at all, even though it is hurting people. I admit that. It is hurting people.
No problems with it, really?
No, I really don't.
They want an 11% pay rise.
They probably deserve it.
They don't deserve it.
Why don't they deserve it?
Why would a train driver who may be earning £54,000 or more a year right now in this economic climate deserve an 11% pay rise? Well, nurses can barely get 1%.
Well, I can't go into a technical thing about a train driver. But that's a skilled job.
54 grand.
That's a skilled
and in fact,
job.
he admitted they were more.
Well, that's an important job. I don't mind them getting a lot of money.
It's saving lives. It's driving a train.
But he's also...
You get in, you sit there, you press a button,
but he's not driving an empty... No, he's not just pressing a button.
Pretty much.
He's not
Actually, pretty much is what they did.
I don't know anything about driving a train.
This is exactly how these leftists, these liberals act. This lady here, she's a freaking author. She has no clue at all. Nothing in her brain. Her brain cells are completely empty. And all she says, just, you know what, whatever they want. I don't know nothing about the subject. I have no idea. But if they want extra money, sure, go ahead. Who's going to pay for it? The customers. And so if they go on strike and they hurt some people, they hurt the majority of Londoners, the majority of the country, they disrupt their daily lives in terms of transportation, who gives a crap? They should be able to withhold. Fine, they want to withhold their labor? Guess what? The companies also have a choice of whether or not to withhold their jobs or fine people. £55,000 a year. It's the equivalency of almost, $60,000 US. I don't know what the daily rate is, but I think it's almost similar. I think the pound's a little bit more. But I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take my advice on that. But I'm just saying, regardless, that is a huge amount of money. And like he said, it's not a skill-required job. Yeah, you get trained for it. But then after that, anybody can train for it and run the trains. So it's not like if somebody decides to leave the job, they have plenty of people. Like I said, there would be plenty of people, I'm sure, in Great Britain would say, I'll sign up for that. I'll sign up to be a train driver. Train me. That's unbelievable, but that's exactly what these people do. It's just money's out there because they're not the ones paying for it. So they can sit on their perch, virtue signal to the rest of us, hey, we're for the workers. Anyways, let's continue.
They deserve a
All
11%
I'm
pay
saying,
rise.
I'm going to
Bonnie.
give them the 11% pay rise because they're workers,
Bonnie.
and that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's ridiculous, attitude.
It's not a
All
ridiculous.
right, then any
Can I
worker
ask
can
a
ask for anything.
question of
And you,
Bonnie?
Bonnie Greer, just go, yeah, you can have it. Isabel.
I would actually.
Isabel.
absolutely-
Douglas, you want to come
I
back on
would
that?
actually.
I just wanted to point out, Bonnie said that it's a skilled job. She then said it's an important job. It is an important job. It's not a skilled job, and there's one way to tell that, Bonnie.
There's a
You
load
or
of
I
drivers
could become a
trained.
train driver if we trained. But
Yeah.
you or I could not just become a brain surgeon tomorrow, could we?
What's that got to do with being a train driver?
Well, the point being, it's not that skilled a work.
Oh no!
is it?
We're gonna compare brain surgeon to a train
Well, let's
driver. That's not
compare.
equal,
No,
is
but
it?
what I would compare is brain surgeons to this, and anyone working in the health
You
service.
can't, but you can't put a
Isabel,
brain surgeon
bring
next
some
to a
common
driver.
sense here.
It's so unskilled that guess what? We can actually get driverless trains, and that is what we should be looking to do. This is a long-term investment. There's no quick fix here, but these guys are basically talking themselves out of a job. Their pay packages are pretty generous. I've looked at the fine print. There have been various good newspaper exposés of that in recent days. I mean, many people in this country would absolutely love those jobs. And frankly, if I were in
Well,
charge,
that's not
I
how
would
you
sack a
measure
lot of
it.
them.
That's
and
not
I would
how
put
you
other
measure
people in.
anything. These people are driving trains.
Oh,
I
no.
have no problem with giving people who are driving trains what they want. No problem.
That's a
No
ridiculous
problem. It's
attitude.
not-
Yeah, no problem at all, you stupid idiot. Okay, you know what? Stamp her with the stamp of simmer. Boom. SIMR. That's right. My acronym. Stupid, idiotic, moronic, and retarded. Because she has no problem paying them. Well, then, honey, why don't you dip into your purse and pay for it? Since you're so rich and you've got the money that you have no problem paying for it, why don't you subsidize the rail workers' unions? Huh? Why don't you do it? Put your money where your mouth is. But see, you won't do that. You know why? Because you don't have to come up with the moolah. It's somebody else has got to do it. Virtue signaling, hypocritical, elite, privileged person.
It's
Bonnie,
not a
you can't
ridiculous
say you can have whatever
attitude.
you want.
I am interested in safety. I'm interested in what if workers need to have a pay rise in this climate. I don't know when they last had one, Piers. I don't know when they last
I
had
don't
one.
think the priority right now. I've nothing against train drivers, by the way. I don't get the train that often. When I do, it's an okay experience. It used to be much more enjoyable driving on the train. It's not enjoyable anymore. They run late. They have poor records now on
They're all
service.
privately owned, aren't they?
Well, I just think it's
already
not an experience it
charge
used to
through the
be. It's not that enjoyable.
Well,
packing people in sardines on smaller carriages.
It's not their problem. It's not their fault.
Bonnie, your argument just seems to be because they want a pay rise, they should get a pay rise.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to apply that to every single worker in this country? And if so,
And they can have whatever
how
they
on
want,
earth is
can
it
they?
going to be paid for?
You can all have whatever
I
you
don't get
want.
it.
Let's
Who's
bankrupt the
who's
country.
going to pay for the pay rises? Is it going to be millions of passengers?
So what are you saying exactly? That we
I'm
should,
saying that your argument is utterly absurd, that they should have a pay rise because they want it, and you think that they're
And they should have
clever.
whatever they want.
I think that the
Big news. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to
premise of this is I'm for workers. I guess that's
Of
what
course,
I'm
we're
saying.
all
Wait a
for
minute, hang on.
workers. I'm for workers.
I guess that's what I'm saying. Now we want to sit around and talk about should they get 12%, should they get 13%? I don't know.
I'm for workers, but Bonnie,
if
I'm
a
not.
worker goes out,
I get
that's
it.
all that they have.
Look, I'm
is
for
withhold
workers,
their
but I'm
labor.
not for a bankrupt country, which is where your philosophy, I'm afraid, would take us. Douglas, I want to bring you back
That's
to
just them take
the other
bankrupt.
raging story of the week is, of course, Rwanda. I'm interested in your take, Douglas, on what you think about it. It seems to me this is a completely doomed policy, that whether you agree with the principle behind it, it's just not going to happen.
Well, that's possible that it won't happen. I support the policy. I support us having borders. I support stopping and dissuading people from engaging in illegal migration into the country. And nobody who's criticized the Rwanda policy has yet come up with a better policy of what to do to stop the illegal migration at the south coast. But you're right, Piers, it may well not happen. Of course, the first plane didn't end up taking off this week. And why? Because of the ECHR. And I think, by the way, I wrote this last week in The Sun. I said that, and I've said many times in the last few years, there was always going to come a day when the British people realized that we had left the customs union and other aspects of the EU, but we remained under the jurisdiction of European law. Now, the ECHR and the European Court that enforces it was the mechanism by which various people made sure that the plane couldn't leave to Rwanda this week. The British courts approved it, but the various activist lawyers and trade unions and others went to use the ECHR, and that was why the flight was blocked. So here's the thing, I think, Pierre. This is a massive political car crash that's been waiting to happen for a long time. The government did not bother to address the issue of the ECHR in recent years, and now the British public are getting to see something that should have been completely predictable, which was that we have remained and do remain still under the jurisdiction of elements of European law.
Yeah.
And that is not why we left the EU. We did not land, of course, at this point all the smart asses say, oh, well, the ECHR is different from the EU. That's true. But nevertheless, the idea of Brexit was we get back control of our borders, of our sovereignty, and the right to make our own laws.
You know, my problem with
as was
Brexit,
shown this week, we don't have that.
Douglas, my problem with Brexit, and I voted Remain, but then I also voted for Boris Johnson at the election because he was the only leader prepared to deliver the result of the referendum. And I believe that democracy and honouring democratic votes was more important than my personal feelings. I've got to say, though, I tweeted this yesterday to a huge response. At some stage, we are going to have to start seeing some benefits from Brexit.
Yeah, sure.
And if we don't, you know, the jungle drums beating to try and maybe overturn it with future governments, they're going to get louder, because right now it's very hard to point to anything and say, well, look, Brexit's working.
Well, I think that's true. I think that, I mean, I don't agree that nothing is good from the last few years. It's been a very unusual time. And of course, don't forget the moment we left the EU, we immediately went into a global pandemic and turned down. So it's extremely hard actually to work that stuff out. I do maintain, though, that the main reason the British public voted for Brexit was that we were told, I think with honesty and accurately, that we could make sure that we could become a sovereign country again, in charge of our own borders, in charge of our own laws.
Bonnie, come in on that.
America is, like other countries
Let's not leave the impression that this was an overwhelming vote for Brexit. This was pretty much, this was very narrow.
Well, it was actually,
hang on.
It was over 17.5 million people.
Exactly, but it was
one of the biggest votes in the history of our country.
Right, but it was a narrow result. And the fact that something like this was decided on a simple yes. One person could have decided Brexit on a simple majority is absurd.
And people like me, this.
I don't think you can revisit it. I do think, though, that the call down the line for another referendum will get louder if there are no benefits to be seen from Brexit.
Actually, I'm going to surprise you by agreeing with you on that, and I'm probably going to annoy a bunch of Brexiteers. I mean, now we've got to make Brexit work. Yeah. It's supposed to be an opportunity.
And by the way, I want it to work.
Not a problem.
Now that we've pressed this button as a country, I respect people's opinions.
We've got to make it work. Brexit was absurd.
Bonnie, rather than ranting about
I'm not ranting. I'm not ranting. No, I'm not.
You can't undo the referendum.
You have not let me.
I'm not undoing the referendum.
Let Isabel finish.
So if you call me a ranter, how can I let you respond?
All right.
Because you are a ranter and an
you're
idiot.
Absolutely right. The whole country needs to see, everybody, including those that didn't vote for Brexit,
tangible
because in
benefit.
the end, we're all in this together, needs to see tangible benefits, and among those is going to have to be leaving the European Court of Human Rights. And now the government has the perfect opportunity to do that. I think everybody can get behind that.
Why do you think we haven't seen any tangible benefits yet?
I didn't say we hadn't seen any tangible benefits. I said that we've got to see Brexit as an opportunity.
I want to get...
This whole idea of Brexit, to leave so that Britain could become sovereign again, its own nation state. And I think what's happening here, and correct me if I'm wrong, from those of you on the other side of the pond, put that down in the comment section below. I'd really like to know more about this, but from what I gather is it's sort of like the deep state here in the United States of America, doing everything that they can, the bureaucracy, to slow walk everything or to shut things down that President Trump wanted, and just make it even more difficult using rules and regulations and statutes, to try to slow walk or just kill, policies that were being put in place. And I see the same thing happen with Brexit. I mean, it should have been, you're done. But the ECHR, the European Court of Human, of Human Rights, yes, it's a separate part of it, but then, like Douglas was saying, and Piers, you're still underneath the European court system. You're still underneath European law. How does that happen? I mean, I couldn't even imagine what would happen in the United States of America if, let's say, for example, we wanted to break away from some type of policy or whatever, but they still said, oh, you know what? In Canada, from Alberta or wherever they're at, they're still going to make the rulings. Or perhaps, from The Hague, they're still going to make the rulings, and you, United States, have got to abide by it. I mean, many things, that's what happens with the useless nations, the United Useless Nations. That needs to be completely abolished. I don't know when that, you know what? There's a whole host of people that would love to get rid of the United Nations because that body absolutely is simmered, SIMR. Everything about the United Nations is stupid, idiotic, moronic, and retarded. From its place and building on the ground to its structure to the people inside, they're all simmers as far as I'm concerned. And I think this, and for England right now, exactly, if you guys don't see anything tangible, you know what's going to happen. They're going to go ahead, and then the newspapers, the media, the social influence from academia, from, the BBC, the entire, network of acolytes that would be say, we need to do another referendum and see what's going on. And then who knows what's going to happen with the new referendum? Because I think it won, they agreed to, go for breakfast. I think it was 52-48, which is, like, Pierre said, over 18 million people, one of the largest numbers of people who voted. And this lady says, oh, well, you know what? It was one vote. I mean, one vote could have won it. What would she have been saying if it had come the other way around? See, that's the difference. When you lose, you lose. Elections have consequences. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. If we've earned it and you like our content, check out all of our other videos that we have. Some of them are right above and below. I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.